Hello, it's another beautiful morning. The Dailies on Echo Television International, where we keep you updated with all the stories that have been dropping on the paper. So we will encourage you to keep a date with us. Follow us live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can be part of the conversation here live. And also later on, we'll open the phone line, so you can also, call in and let us hear what your views are concerning any of the story that is of interest to you. I am Sada Elisha Dasham, and I'm doing the program together with Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Celia.
How was the weekend?
It was fine. How was yours?
Great. All right, we'll go right into the paper, starting with the Punch newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, Governor bid hotel cancels Obaseki's deputy's venue booking. We have companies raise salaries by 4.6 trillion naira in 6 months, a report coming from the NBS. Lecturers shortage hits varsities, ASU blames JAPA, IPPIS. You can find details on page 2. The big story on the paper, banking consolidation. We have mega banks boost 10 trillion naira capital base, others seek fresh investors. The writer under the story, Wema Bank Fidelity, others set for right issues. Over 8 national regional banks may require new capital. CBN may give lenders 12 to 24 months timeline for capital raising. Central Bank urged to engage banks and stakeholders. More details can be found on page 31. Lawmakers push for 32 new federal varsities. Armed robbers invade Ogun Poly communities and shoot students. What a sad story. You can find details on page 4 and 5. We have a picture story where we can see Zenith Bank unveils street Christmas lights and prays for peace. More details can be found on page 33, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Voice of Liberty. And on the Voice of Liberty, the first story over there, here we have fresh recapitalization, bank CEO and others emerging, acquisition talks. You can find details of that story in the paper. Baba Ahmed Lambas Rufai Osani over serving in Tinubu's government.comment. You can find more detail of that, most detail in the paper. And on the issue of the student loan scheme to kick off in January 2024, this is coming from Bajabi Amida. You can find detail in the paper. Dangote refinery to start 350,000 barrel per day crude. This is coming from the CEO and the president. The president and also the chief executive officer Dangote Group, Aliyu Dangote, has said that the $20 billion Dangote refinery in Lekki, Lagos, will start with the refining of 350,000 barrel per day of the crude oil. We will adopt the use of technology to enhance security. This is coming from the police. Stop stalking division against Bubara Ijo 1 wicked. You can find detail of that story in the paper. Tinubu's intervention in governor-stroke deputy field mayor window dressing. This is coming from the PDP. Suspend loans to Nigerian statistics state. Serap tells the World Bank demand probe of the loans. You can find more detail of that particular story in the paper. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On the Independent newspaper, starting with a big story, we have investors, OK banks, fresh recapitalization and odd transparency. The writer under the story, caution Apex Bank on timing, tax in on forex and inflation. Wants process to be more about incentives than coercion. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 28. Senate to probe federal government 250 billion naira gas expansion program. Former minister tackles Obasanjo over democracy not working for Africa comments. United Nigeria Airlines diverts Abuja flight to Asaba over bad weather. More details can be found on page 6. Gunmen kidnap, kill Imo monarch. Israel vows to restart fighting in Gaza after hostages return. Tinubu presidency is God ordained, says Oba of Benin. You can find details on page 7. Zenith Bank transform Ajose Adeogun Street with Christmas decorations. More details can be found on page 6. Curfew in Sierra Leone after gunmen attack on military barracks detention centers. Still on Daily Independent, 87 trillion naira debt Serap asks World Bank to scrutinize loans to Nigeria state, alleges mismanagement, diversion of funds by sub-nationals. And at the downside of the paper, Bayelsa community protests alleged military invasion. More details can be found on page 8. Still, we have a picture story where we can see Zenith Bank transforming Ajose Odogun Street with Christmas decorations. And that's all the news on Daily Independent newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the leadership newspaper. Shaibu declares for Edo governorship today. Detail found on page 6. Israel releases 39 Palestinian Hamas hand over 17 hostages. And on fact check, we see what did PDP say about Tinubu's intervention in Ondo. Troops rescue 6 in Kebbi. You can find detail of both stories on page 2. Here we have call-up tickets. Racketeering pushes haulage costs by 200%. You can find more of that in the paper. Election petition must end before inauguration, coming from stakeholders. Detail found in the paper. Federal government revisit plan for local production of vaccines. And on cool scare, Sierra Leone imposes nationwide curfew. Detail found on page 7. Kogi queries monarch over Pakistan politics. You can find more in the paper. No plan to ban hijab in Niger, says Governor Bago. You can find detail on page 17. The big story, which is on local government autonomy. 313 out of 774 councils run by sole administrators, with the writer saying only 20 states have elected local government executive. Non-compliant governors have no timetable for local government elections. You can find detail on page 4. And I think, Rachel, you and I have hammered so much about the issue of local government autonomy. And you can see from the papers this morning, it has been brought to the limelight the fact that a lot of governors are yet to conduct local government elections in their state. Here we're having that only about 20 states have elected local government executives. So that means we are left with about 15 or so, or that are yet to do the elections. And then I think then it's high time that they call them to order to ask reasons why they're unable to conduct elections in these local government areas, because it is paramount so that we can have executives over there that will actually oversee the affair of the local government. We keep emphasizing on the fact that a lot of development needs to take place over there, and we cannot see development if there is no elections. You need to go down to our local government areas. It will shock you, and then you begin to ask questions for people who have as at the House of Representatives or even our senators. What are you doing over there that you cannot call the governors of your various states to tell them there is a need for elections to be done here? We've seen one of many other places in the likes of Imo State, where we see a lot of people coming out to complain that ever since the governor was on seat, there was no even plan for election. That is one out of many other states where we see certain governors are not even planning. It's one thing for you to plan and then it failed, that for you not to even have a plan whatsoever. And as we can see, you're actually infringing on the rights of the local government area. No wonder whatever is being given to them hardly gets over there. So I hope that with this, making it on the paper, we'll begin to see governors making proactive measures, being deliberate to make sure that elections take place in these local government areas, because it is important for development in these areas.
I mean, Sela, we can't stop hammering on this, and we can't stop overemphasizing on the fact that local government needs this autonomy, they need this authority. And above all, even if as a state government you are reluctant concerning the autonomy, why are you reluctant concerning the election? At least before we grow to the level where you are ready to give them complete power, why are you depriving them the privilege of having a head over them to see the affairs before we can now talk further on giving them all the necessary power that they need? So for now, I believe that there should be some kind of sanction. That's why I keep saying, Sally, there are certain things that if you want growth to happen, don't just leave it at the dispensation of who wants to and who don't want to. Why are there not elections in these local government areas? Why are we not having chairman, local government chairman? Why are we not having? There should be sanctions for state governors that have refused to conduct election. Why was yours conducted and you were the governor? Date was being kept and all of that for the state to move. And then when it comes to the local government, which is the grassroots, that whether we like it or not, if the
is flourishing and moving as it should be,
The
we
state
will
will
feel
also.
exactly, because that is where a lot of people are directly feeling the impact of the government. So why are we not taking those levels seriously and just focusing on the state capital? And yet no wonder we are seeing slow growth until we have this growth mentality and mindset that at all costs I want to see my state grow as an administration, as the governor, as the current power figure in the state. We will not see something significant. So I believe we should get to the point where there are certain things that if a state governor doesn't take seriously, it's not just please do this, why haven't you, but there should be sanction, because it shouldn't even be in the first place.
So I think we'll be keeping our fingers crossed, hoping and trusting that we'll see governors taking the measure step and also conducting the elections. We still have the picture story where we can see Zenith Bar when unveiling the Christmas tree over there. So that is all on the leadership newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, local refineries to begin production soon. A statement from the president Tinubu.
Obaseki targets 70 billion naira IGR by 2024. How to prevent electoral shambles by Atahiru Jega, the former INEC chairman. You can find details on how on page 14. The big story on the paper, hardship, more Nigerians opt for loans to make ends meet. Consumer loans up 34% as inflation, naira depreciation eat up households' income. Banks deploy digitalization, product diversification to address demand. Persistent price increase drives households to banks for borrowing. This is coming from an analyst, and it's really sad because it just shows how bad an economy is deteriorating, because it is not acceptable. I mean, Sele, we can go on loans for school. We can go on loans for healthcare. We can go on loans to start businesses, to acquire properties, to do things that are not liabilities, but that will bring profit and interest or for some kind of benefit, but not for daily living, Sele, not for food. It's not acceptable, not for basic needs. It's not acceptable. It shouldn't be heard of anywhere. And it only shows that, you know what, this hardship is going to linger for a while, and we just hope that the federal government of Nigeria is going to do something about it. Because imagine, Sele, if you have to borrow to eat, it's going to be really tough, because now you're borrowing to eat and there are other needs also. So you have to now start thinking of settling loans, and you go to the banks, and we know what the interest rate is like when it comes to banks. It's not friendly. It's just for like mega businesses to be able to profit from it, and then we're seeing households going to that kind of resort. And then we just hope that, this doesn't linger for too long. We have hopes for 2024, looking at the promises from the president, and we just hope that something will turn out, that perhaps this will just be for 2023, and hopefully 2024 will be better. But then Nigerians, as we keep saying, should just brace themselves for the hardship, because it doesn't feel like at the moment things are getting any better. We are really going to be in this for a long time, so far as we can see it.
Rachel, you know what? I don't think this is what Nigerians want to hear. Raise up yourself for more hardship. How comes our leaders are not breathing up for hardship, Rachel? That is the question.
Yes.
A Nigerian will ask you if you go to the street now to maybe ask random interview or questions to Nigerians. Reason why? Because we're seeing where Nigerians have faulted the issue where the president, we're seeing the private, talking about private jet, the yacht, and
all the expenses.
mainly the expenses we're seeing that our executive are actually consuming. We've said it here before, Richard, the fact that, of course, as leaders, you need to have all that it needs for you to be able to serve your people. But I do not think that our leaders really know what it means to be a leader, because first and foremost, you have to be a servant. No wonder election have now become a do or die affair.
Yeah.
Now imagine, Richard, you clearly stated it. Imagine you're borrowing for your daily living. Let's not even talk about house rent. Let's not even talk about school fees. Because believe me, the exams will be starting soon. You will now be seeing a lot of kids on the street because schools can no longer take it. So you have to go. We saw in the earlier paper whereby we're even seeing, as we are complaining, the number of lecturers. They are not even having lecturers, because even these lecturers are having it they're finding it difficult to also take care of their families. So they have to look for a way to leave the country or live a better life. So I think right now what Nigerians need to hear is, what is the government doing? We keep
Yes.
asking the question, where are the palliatives you promised Nigerians?
Nothing.
Where is the money that you say you're going to give about 50 million household? Where is the money?
Still quiet.
I'm yet to hear the humanitarian affair coming out to tell us some of the
What
things
she is going
what
to
she
do,
is going
yeah.
to do about this. Because whether we like it or not, it might not be totally her responsibility. But whether she like it or not, that is
Ministry
what
needs
it
to
is her
work.
ministry that is
Yeah.
supposed to do that. So when your ministry fail to do something, it is you that will be called to answer. And I'm hoping to hear senators asking these questions. Of course, we know that as it is presently, we are still running politics because a lot of shaking, a lot of petitions
Left,
are
right,
still in the
center,
court.
yeah.
So right now, that might be a reason for some of our lawmakers or some of them to say that, I mean, we're yet to start doing the right thing. Why? Because we are still trying to sit properly. But I think that if you're able to get yourself a house over there in the FCT, if you're able to do one or two things, you should be able to take care of the people in your city. And that is why, Rachel, we keep hammering on the issue of this local government autonomy. Imagine if we had chairman, imagine if the government was able to take care of insecurity. Farmers would be able to go to their farm. Imagine if we had good roads. I mean, farmers will be able to transport whatever good or produce they have to the market, and they will not see people borrowing to eat. Rachel, you and I saw the number of suicide people that were. Why? Because they borrowed from an app
Yes.
and they're unable
All
to
the
pay.
loan sharks online.
Exactly. They're unable to pay and they have to resort to taking their own lives. Rachel, the way things are moving, hardship is no longer. You and I
not
said it here,
funny,
the fact that even when we're having crisis or whatever, war, mostly what kills people is not even the war, but it is hunger.
It is hunger.
Because Rachel, if you remember what happened during the Civil War, a lot of kids died during that time. So right now, as it is right presently, we might not be going through a new war presently, but the war that we're going on here is hunger, poverty. And I'm hoping that our leaders will listen to the plight of Nigerians. They did not vote you to go over there and live a luxurious life and forget about
Not
them.
on taxpayers' money.
Taxpayers' money, Rachel. Nobody is actually living on his own money.
Of
We saw the
course
way
not.
governors were coming out to actually give reason for their
For
reckless spending.
expenditures, but I mean, what reason is
40-something
good
million
enough
for
for
vegetables,
vegetables
Rachel.
selling?
This is something that if you give a state, they will really appreciate you.
Of course,
Imagine
that's a
going to every
palliative that will go
household.
around a number of people. So like, that's a palliative that will go around a number of people, no matter how little it is. But it is an amount that will help a certain amount of people, and yet we have it on vegetables.
So I'm just hoping, Rachel, that our leaders will sit up. They need
You
to
hope
raise
so.
up, because if you think you're living a comfortable life over there and you're making life difficult for the masses, it will be very, very dangerous for you the day the masses will rise up for themselves.
it
And we
will.
do not want to have a repeat of the hashtag NSAS. This was the result of all of this hardship, brutality, lack of governance, and all of that. So our fingers will be crossed, Rachel. We hope that they will wake up to do the right thing by the
hope so,
people.
Still on the Vanguard newspaper, federal government molds full autonomy for universities. Women group protest in Kano, false appeal court verdict. You can find more details on page 13. Serap to World Bank suspend loans to states over misspending. Federal government approves National Data Bank for Education, targets $9.5 billion. More details can be found on page 36. We have a column on page 16 by Awele Kemfa, and then a column on page 39 for sports, AFCON qualifiers, Ashola, Olozi, opt out. You can find details on page 39. Still picture story, Zenith Bank activates spirit of Christmas, lights up at Jose at Dogon. And that's all the news on Vanguard.
And on First News newspaper, 2024 Global Poll, Edo Deputy Governor Diet Obaseki formally declares today. You can find detail of that story in the paper. Also, we are having Amazonian fighters threatening to kill Okocha Amokachi in Cameroon. Warn them not to honor the FA president invitation, says security won't be guaranteed. You can look up that story inside the paper. And on 87 trillion naira debt, suspend loans to Nigerians 36 states, Serap tells World Bank. Dangote refinery to start with 350,000 barrels per day of crude oil. This is coming from Dangote. Court sacks 16 PDP state lawmakers, 5 National Assembly members. Detail found in the paper. Ondo APC leaders front Tinubu's intervention, insists on Aitiwa as acting governor. Details found in the paper. Hundreds of women protest appeal court sacking of Kanu governor. You can find more in the paper. ECOWAS US condemns security breaches in Sierra Leone. Minister intervenes in cooking gas price hike with detail in the paper. Resident flees Zamfara communities after bandits abducted 110 residents. And it was really sad, Richard, when I read that story, right, during the weekend. I mean, I saw that story yesterday also, and it breaks my heart because these residents or these people have to leave their communities because bandits have promised or actually threatened that if they do not pay 110 million naira, they will come to abduct more people. Here we're seeing that about 110 have already been abducted by these kidnappers, and they keep sending threat. And then the way they share the money to different communities. This community will pay about 50, another will pay about 20, and that is how they share it. And they are telling this community to produce 110. According to some of the people who are still there, they said they had to abandon their community. The only people you find in those communities are the old, the sick, and animals. Why? Because these people cannot even go to their farmlands to do anything. Rachel, we're talking about people who are very poor, and you're expecting these people to produce or however magic you want them to do to bring up this money. And they complain that they have lamented to the security, they have lamented to the governor, they have lamented, but it seems as if their plea falls in deaf ear. Nobody's paying attention. Rachel, this is just Zamfara that made it to the papers. I'm imagining how many more states have actually or are going through the same thing, and they keep crying out and nobody seems to be listening. Because if somebody is listening, we're supposed to be seeing something being done.
Yeah.
I keep saying, Richard, that these people are not spirits. We know who they are. We know where they live. This is one thing I believe.
Of course.
Because we cannot claim that we do not know. They're in
They
Nigeria.
don't live in the SLF. For
They
Christ's
send
sake.
messages.
They
How
have
do they send
places
these
they live.
messages? They use mobiles. Did they register those numbers? They must have registered. And then we believe that NIN was supposed to be a way for you to trace if you are doing any suspicious thing using your phones or your SIM cards or whatever. So I am believing that we know all of this thing. The government is aware of all of this thing, but maybe perhaps response is slow. Because according to some of the people who have been interviewed there, they said, in fact, as of the time of filing this issue, they have been trying to get to the ASP over there, and no response is coming, Rachel. What are we doing about this? What is the IGP of police doing about this? So I'm just hoping, even though we know that the president is trying his best, he has said they should increase the number of people who will be recruited into the force. But beyond increasing the number of these people, are they going to the right places that they are supposed to be? Or are we seeing about 10 or 5 on checkpoints on the road, and then the main thing is happening inside, and then you're not going over there to tackle it? So I'm just calling on the government to please listen to the plight of these people. There was a time it was in Borno. Right now we're saying it's in Zamfara. Presently, there's supposed to even be an election again in Zamfara because the election is inconclusive. So, Rachel, quite a number of things need to be tackled. And I'm hoping that the government will respond fast. Because if you're talking about 110 already in the hands of this bandit, and then they are requesting for 110 million. So it looks more like every person, they have put a price tag of 100 million on each, or a million on each of them to be able to come up with 110. So we are hoping the government will truly, truly wake up and do their responsibility. Because believe me, if you fail to protect lives and property, you have failed in your leadership totally. And I'm hoping that they will do just that, Rachel.
So let these people live in communities. I mean, that has always been your emphasis, that we can't sit down and say they are unknown. They are known. These herdsmen, these bandits, these gunmen have families, have children. We know how it has been in some local government areas on the plateau. And then we know the testimony coming from people that have survived these attacks. These people come from certain place, and they always try to take over and occupy. Usually that's their aim, is to send these people out, come and raid these villages and make them theirs. A lot of times these communities know that these people are in this place, but they're also afraid to speak up, because if I speak up, who are the security people that will come to our aid? Valid information, are they going to come and deliver us? So it's just so much work. And in as much as we would like to say, yes, the military is working, the Air Force is working, but there's so much that needs to be done. The pace in which they are going is slow, Sele.
That is the fact. The response is slow. The way they're supposed to tackle it is slow. Is there some progress? There
But for the situation at hand, it doesn't need slow response. It needs fast. It needs quick action because people are losing their lives daily. People are not able to farm. People are living in hunger and poverty that is subjected upon them due to this insecurity and not because of anything. And then whether we like it or not, this insecurity is increasing the hunger, the poverty, because we know how people at the rural areas live. It's their farm, they eat, and they are good to go. I mean, it's us at the urban area that we're worried about a lot of things that they are not even worried about. And then we just see it that it keeps increasing and the level of poverty that we're not even supposed to look at is surfacing. So I just hope that we have our security agencies being quick and active, so like there's no room for slow response. If you are slow, it's hundreds of people losing their lives on a daily basis, and just how many success are you recording compared to the lives that we're losing on a daily basis? So this is fast response, and that is what we need from our security agencies.
Well, we hope that they respond as quick as possible.
Yes.
Well, we have other stories, picture stories on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On New Telegraph newspaper, the big story, progressive politics dead, coming from APC chief time. Says Ganduje playing politics of expulsion. Opposition giving support, false hope, coming from APC Northwest. More details can be found on page 4 and 5. Financial institutions' contribution to GDP rises 28.8% to 2.49 trillion naira. Federal government moves to crash cooking gas price. I just hope it won't be another situation of subsidy, but let's see what is the template that they'll be bringing up concerning crashing the price of cooking gas price. You can find more details on page 8. Senate probes federal government 250 billion naira gas expansion program. And from Tunji Ojo, efficient mining of our borders will reduce security threats. We have Kiari's digital operations automation key to NNPC Limited's efficiency. Why election winners should emerge through ballots by lawyers. You should find more details on page 4 and 16. 8.7 trillion naira debt. We have Serap asked World Bank to suspend loans to state over alleged diversion. Zenith Bank transformer Jose with resplendent decoration. You can find more details on page 8. And on abduction, residents flee Zamfara communities. Drama as Abuja-bound aircraft lands in Asaba. Airlines attributes diversion to bad weather. More details can be found on page 2. Continuing with Buhari's policies shows government lacks focus, a statement coming from Sule Lamido. And at the downside of the paper, we have a study that says Zoom fatigue might affect brain and heart. More details can be found on page 27, and that's all news on New Telegraph newspaper.
All right, before we continue with other paper analysis, we'd love to take this time out so we can open the phone lines when we come back from the break, because quite a number of stories on the paper. We would love to hear your own views about the story, so please stay tuned with us. When we come back from the break, we'll open the phone lines.
Hello viewers, my name is Amaka Ocheke. We anchor the program, The Living Room, right here on Equa TV International.
You are welcome to watch us every Monday.
The Living Room is a very interesting family program where we discuss everything you want to know about family.
Talk about our children's mental health.
Keep watching. Our program is always here, 5:30 every Monday. We want you to ask questions. We want you to phone in and drop topics that you want us to talk about, even on our media handle on Facebook. We're there. So keep watching, keep listening. The Living Room.
Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper that are quite of interest. And at this moment, we'd love to open the phone line so we can hear your own views about the story, among which we see Dangote will he's about to start launch it with a 350,000 barrel per day crude oil, and also we are seeing about 110 people have been abducted from Zamfara while the residents have fled their resident because of that issue. We would love to hear your own feedbacks about all of the stories. The number is on your screen. Do well to call us. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, and then be audible enough so we can hear you and other viewers at home can also hear you as well. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thanks so much.
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Times newspaper before the calls come in. On the Monetary Policy Committee, CBN clears the forex backlog of 31 banks, may not hold meeting this year. When people were looking forward to that meeting and it seems it might not hold, you can look up to that story inside the paper to see reasons for that. And on insecurity, the big story for the Daily Times here saying non-indigenous students flee federal varsity in Zamfara. This is coming from sources. My parents vow I can never return there, says a student. How kidnapped male student escaped. Also, we're seeing some persons outside the varsity may be complicit in spite of kidnapping. What the federal government should do to end abduction there. Not aware of student exit. This is coming from varsity spokesman. Well, you can look up that story on page 4. We saw the number of people that were being kidnapped here, Rachel. So it will be valid if we see students afraid to go back to school. It will be valid to hear parents telling their words, you know what, your life is more better than you going to that state or that education for the meantime. So we are looking forward to seeing what the federal government is going to do, what the Zamfara government is doing about the issue of all of this insecurity going on in the state. Still on the Daily Times, we also have unemployment. Kalu More bill for national apprenticeship scheme. You can find that on page 5. FCT Water Board acting GM monitors revenue collection. Customers smile. We detailed in the paper. Empowering women economically will reduce exposure to GBV. You can find that inside the paper. This is a report. Appeal Court verdict. Mutfan works spiritually. God will taught Supreme Court justices to restore joy to Plateau State. Democracy hasn't failed in Nigeria. Operators behaving badly. This is coming from the former minister replies to Obasanjo. You can find more detail. Remember what Obasanjo said, that democracy is not for us. And here we are saying that the former minister is replying by saying that actually democracy hasn't failed in Nigeria. Rather, operators are behaving badly. And I think that is what you and I said, Richard, the father. It's not democracy that's the problem, but it's the vehicle to convey it that is mostly the problem. So let's just keep our fingers crossed and hoping that our leaders will get it right. And downside of the paper, Edu IGR to reach 70 billion naira in 2024, says Obaseki. You can find that on page 5. We have a picture story where we can see one of the festivals in Ogun State. More detail can be found in the paper. That's all on the Daily Times newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, banks brace for new monetary policy conduct and regulation. As Cardoso returns CBN to traditional monetary policy regime. New framework for payment service policies, monetary tightening to continue till the second quarter of 2024. And then we have new capital base for Nigerian banks. This is usually the new capital base. We see that a lot of banks in the past have short or had to merge with one another. And then we have new foreign exchange guidelines on legislations and then price stability. We hope this helps the monetary policy together with fiscal situation in the country. We have coup scare. We have Sierra Leone declares curfew as ECOWAS condemns plot. Coming from the National Bureau of Statistics, imperative of creating stronger, vibrant data system. Women lawyers canvass castration of rapists. You can find more details on page 28. Serap urges World Bank to suspend loans to states. More details can be found on page 5. Guber aftershocks. We have Kogi queries Monarch as APC gives Kano AG ultimatum. You can find more details on page 6. The judiciary and justice, Dati Joe Mohammed's concern. You can find more details of this editorial on page 12, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, $134 million African development loan will boost dry season farming food security. Remember, we saw that last week when the vice president had a neck, and then looking at some of the states that will start the first batch of the dry season farming. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. Federal government will foreign investors with 100% forex repatriation. You can find that in page 8. Adeleke absence on anniversary day raises dust in Osun. You can find more detail on page 12. NDLEA scoop on drug party arrest organizers in Oshobo. You can find more detail of that story on page 7. And ECOWAS condemned attempts to truncate democratic government in Sierra Leone. Data found on page 4. Shaibu declaration renewed Edo 2024 battle with Obaseki. Clash of camps likely at the venue. You can find more detail of that crisis over there in Edo State. CBN revised measures to cut food and energy inflation. Cardoso to unveil plan. Government caution producers against export amid soaring gas price. And we have a caption here that says it is crucial that we prioritize price stability to safeguard the livelihood of our fellow Nigerians. Detail found in the paper. And downside of the paper, United Nigeria Airlines explain diversion of Lagos-Abuja plan to Asaba. Detail of that story can be found on page 5. We have some picture stories on the front page of the paper. Do well to grab the niche and read any other story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, Petroleum Minister wades into LPG supply price hike challenges. Obaseki deputies set for showdown fixed event for same venue. Multiple bank charges amid rising inflation worry Nigerians. The big story on the paper, why CBN governor is right on bank recapitalization. Coming from experts, says inflation, naira depreciation, weakening capital adequacy of banks. Want national, regional, international banks to coexist. More details can be found on page 6. ECOWAS condemned attempted coup in Syria. Learn more details can be found on page 11. Suspense in Plateau over moves to inaugurate assembly. We have surpassed our first year good governance target, a statement from Adeleke. NDLEA nabs organizers of Osun illicit drug party tagged on Holy Alliance. More details can be found on page 26. NJC panel meets tomorrow to pick 11 new Supreme Court justices. We have ex-CGN Kutigi's son, Abiru Samani, others on FJSC priority list favored. More details can be found on page 5, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Well, Richard, I think is at this point Nigerians have to join their feet and pray, because it is important that we have, judges that are fair, judges that are credible. Beyond all things, people who actually merit it. It shouldn't be based on nepotism, favor, or because you know somebody over there.
Past chief justices were their parents
and all of that. Yeah, we don't want to see that, because really with all that is happening, especially with all of the petitions, you will see that there is a need to have people who will be loyal to the people and not to think about any political party or anything. We hope that we'll see judiciary that is actually, independent, that they can make a decision without regardless of who will be hurt eventually. So our fingers will be crossed as we look up to tomorrow. Well, let's look at the next paper, which is the Daily Sun newspaper. And on the Daily Sun newspaper, we have banks jittering over the fresh recapitalization plan, with the writer OPS and others ask CBN to peg banks and capital base at 100 billion naira. DMBs begin merging talks. You can find more detail of that story on page 2. Abuja resident on edge as bandits terrorize 4-area council. Beggars burn in federal secretariat. You can find more detail of that story on page 4. And I think it shouldn't just be in the FCT. We should see all of that also being transmitted to other states, because it is important. Sometimes we have people disguising as beggars and they're causing nuisance in the environment. Meanwhile, these are the people that actually cause the problem we are having in the country. So we hope that not just in the FCT are we going to see that, but then we'll see that in other states as well. 87 trillion naira debt, suspend loans to Nigerians, 36 states over Misspending, Serap tells World Bank with data found on page 6. Edu IGR to hit 70 billion in 2024, says Obaseki. Takes Edu Economic Summit to China, woos investors with business-friendly reforms and other incentives. Data found on page 26. Deputy Speaker Kalu Malt's bill for national apprenticeship scheme. You can find more of that on page 6. Gunmen kidnap and murder monarch in Imo State. Detail found on page 5. This is really a sad one. He was kidnapped on Saturday morning and then his body was being found on Saturday evening. Where we hope this should be an eye-opener, so we have our security agency doing something about security, because the people of this place are thinking if their own monarch can be kidnapped and murdered, then what happened to them residents? They have no security whatsoever. So this is an eye-opener, Richard, that there is a need for serious security emergency in this state. In this country, not even in this state, because we really, really need to look into what is happening. There seems to be a decay in this economy, and then a lot of things seems to be crumbling one after the other. So we hope that the Imo State governor will do something about this, and then everybody will actually put their hands on deck and then let us tackle this enemy we're having, because it's a common enemy to everybody, that they will tackle this insecurity and all of the things that are happening in the country.
We are also going to the part where we are not separating certain crimes. We just leave them under an umbrella. I mean, one person cannot be targeted and then you make it look like it's another situation of just unknown gunmen. If a monarch is being kidnapped and then murdered, this feels like assassination. He is a targeted individual, and then it's not just some community raid and then others together with the monarch happen to be killed. But then when we begin to see some target crimes or killing, then we should know perhaps that this is beyond just the normal kidnapping that we see by herdsmen or whosoever. But I believe that this individual was a target, and then the investigation for this should be taken seriously, because now we have people hiding under the disguise of the kind of criminal wave that we are having in the country, hiding under the disguise that makes it look like it is a normal happening, and then we are having people being assassinated. We've seen where monarchs have been killed. As far as I'm concerned, these are figures that could be targeted, and somebody could want them out of that position. So we should also begin to separate these crimes and stop giving them some kind of umbrella names and all of that, because once we do that, then a lot of things will thrive under the umbrella of the norm of what is happening, whereas there are certain situations that are not just the normal, but these people have been targeted. So I just hope that our security agencies just do the work that is expected of them. Let's know the difference when this is a kidnapping. Let's know it's a kidnapping, and when someone has been assassinated, I believe we should also know the difference and not just leave it under the umbrella that it is a type of attack, whereas these people are being targeted.
Well, and I think, just like you said, this is an issue of assassination, and we hope that they will do the interrogation properly, so that you can also protect the family of the monarch, because you never can tell who will be the next target eventually. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, we have Enugu residents center Lon Mba for addressing water scarcity, call for more recoalition and warn vandals. You can find more detail on page 28. Federal government steps into cooking gas crisis, set up committee to crash the price. Detail found in the paper. 3,000 barrels of crude oil lost to November. 15 offshore oil spilled. This is coming from the NOSDRA. Detail found on page 5. And that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On
My
this
name is
day,
Anthony.
newspapers, Zenith Bank heralds Christmas yearly two seasons with Ajose at Dogon Street.
Please, I
I
want
think
to
we
ask,
have a call. Hello.
if you people they make broadcast, if you they show the pictures, what's happening in any place you are making broadcast.
Sorry, can you reduce the volume of your TV set? We can barely hear you, sir.
Hello?
Can you reduce the volume of your TV
Hello?
set?
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, hello?
Okay, please, control room. Maybe you end that call so he can call us back again.
Hello?
Please, to our viewers at home, if you intend to call us, reduce the volume of your TV set when you're calling, because we'd love to hear what you have to say. It will be impossible for us to get your message if your TV set is still very high. So you actually turn the volume down or you off it completely. Thank you so much. Please, Richard, let's look at the paper.
Still on this day newspaper, federal government meets producers over rising gas prices as rates surge by 14% in October. The big story on the paper, Oba of Benin to Nigerians, Tinubu's presidency ordained by God. Hail Sanwo-Olu's giant strides in Lagos. Governor takes royal father on tour of State Museum. More details can be found on page 5. And in Sierra Leone, we have an imposed nationwide curfew after failed coup attempt. Zenith lights up at Jose Adogun Street for Christmas must have been on most of our papers, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. NNPCL wins 2023 Nigerian Government Tech Award, drives fetches $1 million. Detail found on page 7. NAF airstrike eliminates 3 terrorist leaders in the Northeast. Detail found on page 21, and we have to applaud them for a well-done job. Bandits attack Zamfara communities, abduct 100. This is what we have on the Blueprint newspaper. And on 2023 polls, don't drag yourself into politics. Kuka caution Nigerian judiciary. Detail found on page 5. And the big story on the coup attempt in Sierra Leone, we won't tolerate plots to disrupt peace. ECOWAS warned with the rider prisoners abducted during security breach. Mad Bill imposes nationwide curfew and aviation reschedules flight. You can find details of that on page 6. Still on Blueprint newspaper, we have focus on reform to drive non-oil export revenue. CIBN urges CBN.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Good morning. How is everything? How is the weather in Plateau State?
Everything is good, sir. Please
I
go.
just want to commend the Tinubu government concerning the issue of cooking gas. God will continue to help him. The man needs intervention from God to enable him to resolve the crisis on ground. And I pray that God will help him.
Amen.
Yeah, concerning the capitalization of the bank, it's a welcome development. God will continue to help every one of you and ECOWAS Television. We are enjoying you in Lagos. We are watching you every day and night, and we are enjoying your program.
Thank you so much, sir.
Remain blessed in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it. I mean, our leaders need experience to do better. Yes. And we hope to see more reforms that will make Nigerians excited. Still on the Blueprint newspaper, Telecom lead as ICT contributes 15.97% to Nigerian GDP in the third quarter of 2023. 5 out of 109 senators replaced as Ibuyi South seat remains vacant. Detail found on page 16. And still on the 87 trillion naira debt, halt further loans to Nigerians 36 states, Serap tells World Bank. Bimo's nation 46.25 trillion naira debt overhang. Detail found on page 6, and that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On national economy, why you may forever pay more at the ATM. Experts lament Nigeria's $10 billion loss to importation of welders. More details can be found on page 5. The big story on the paper, bad roads worsen food inflation, coming from experts. Stakeholders say no country can develop with decrepit road infrastructure. At the downside, rethinking duties and levies on imported manufacturing inputs in Nigeria. And then we have a table where we can see what currencies are buying and selling at the moment. We have for the US dollar, the pound sterling, the euros, and we can also see the CBN exchange rate as of today. And then we can also see commodities such as Brent, gold, silver, and gas. And that's all the news on national economy.
Well, Richard, this road really, it's very bad. And I hope that the government will look into this. You could tell this is one road in one state, and then this is just showing us
in
Many.
that one state.
Many, Rachel, many. And you remember I said our farmers really need these routes to be fixed because it's very difficult for them to be able to transport their goods from the farm and then coming to the market. So I hope that the government of the various states will pay attention. And even some of our federal roads that are very, very bad, that the government will look into that. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for doing this program with me. Thank you so much to our caller who called from Lagos State. Thank you to also our viewers and our supporters for always keeping the date with us on this program. Until we come your way again, do have a blessed day ahead.